Hello, welcome to PODnas. This is a sports show with a Cajun flair. I'm Daniel Hawks. That's Jared Roser, and we have a brand new theme song. Thank you, Brad Kemp, so much. We are doing good today. How are you feeling, Jared? I didn't mean to speak for you. My bad.
Well, I'm terrible. No, I'm glad you mentioned the new theme song. I think that was important. Shout out Brad, who obviously does awesome stuff just in general. And I
New
mean,
phone. Who this? Let's go.
you you've worked with him. I mean, obviously a ton through the years, and it's been awesome. Anytime I have a chance to interact with him, and you guys had some fun in the studio yesterday and put together. I thought great concept and everything that I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about mashing together. If you want to talk about some of that process.
So it is. This new theme has. We sampled 5 different Louisiana colleges and their marching bands. We did LSU, we did Southern, we did ULM, we did La Tech, we did Tulane, we did UL. Um, and just kind of, I mean, it is what it is. We're a sports show with a Southern flair. Why don't we get some Southern flair on it? My favorite thing, and shout out to Brad Kemp, is when I was talking to him about it, and he was like, "Oh, like Little Wayne." I was like, "Yeah, Brad, like Lil Wayne." I didn't even want to grace him with Big Frida's present. I didn't even know if he could know what to do with that.
Maybe next week. It's an
Oh, we got it. We have another stuff on the books. I've got some new music coming out, so that's cool. For the kids that don't know, I make crappy music for the ear holes. So
and
uh,
Brad is from Wisconsin
Brad's a
originally.
cheesehead. Brad's a
Yeah,
Packer fan. He's literally from right outside of Green Bay.
and so it's just a process, catching him up on some of the New Orleans specifics. But I mean, I thought it worked out well this time
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, music theater kid, so he gets at least the New Orleans theatrics, so that was a little bit of an easy lean for it. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about music. We're here to talk sports and sports related things. I mainly the Saints head coach search, which is still going. It's still happening. They are the only team that doesn't have a coach now. The Jags got a coach, right? Did they get a coach?
I don't know. I don't.
I don't care about the Jags, Jared says.
No, they did. They did. My bad. They did. Yeah, they've had some notable shakeup and actually did hire a new coach.
Who
I
looks kind of like me. Oh, wow. Am I the Jags coach?
Which
I
is
think
funny because I was gonna say he looked kind of like Nick Foles or Napoleon Dynamite.
also kind of like me. But latest news is Kellen Moore is the front runner. Also, the Saints have interviewed Mike Kafka, the New York Giants offense coordinator, for 9 hours. Also, they interviewed Eric Bieniemy for 8 hours as well. Um,
Are
I,
they? They're like in like exclusive relationships with those guys now, right? I
I
don't.
I honestly think they just watched the extended version of Lord of the Rings and then talk football for like 15 minutes.
I don't want to talk to anybody for that long, and
No.
I'm a long talker, but that's too much.
Do you think that there were breaks?
That's
Or do
like
you think it was just straight up like a full day of work?
that's like
Like,
4 me and Tyler Batiste FaceTimes
yeah,
in a row.
yeah.
It's a lot.
Or like one Chet FaceTime.
No, get out of that quick.
Which also we've got a very special guest coming up next week too. Gonna give us some predictions on next weekend. It's not what you think. You'll see. But Jarrett, what are your thoughts on? Because I have thoughts on this head coach search and the link that it's taken for the Saints, and also um, the options that have kind of like showed themselves and then gone away. What are your thoughts kind of on this and on this process? And what would you think if Kellen Moore, Mike Kafka, or Eric Bieniemy were the new Saints head coach?
I think there's there's reasons for optimism for those guys, particularly. I mean, Kellen Moore.
I don't know about
eh,
Mike Kafka. Did you see the Giants this year?
right. I was gonna say particularly Kellen Moore and
There's
Eric Bieniemy.
there's no
There
Malik Neighbors or or Wandell Robinson to dump the ball off short to in a 5-yard pass and hope that they break a tackle. So
there's there's some track record of success with a couple of those guys, we'll say. And look, I mean, going back a little ways, Kafka's had some success as well, and obviously, just like we talked about with Mike McCarthy trying to deal with everything in Dallas, or with DeJounte trying to deal with the not great fit in Atlanta. There's always a level of, you have to consider what guys are doing with what they have, and the fact that the Giants are not necessarily a well-stocked organization right now in terms of what he has to work with up there. But my biggest takeaway from all of this has just been the process overall, and the one after another guys' names being removed, including a guy like Mike McCarthy, who is, I mean, a long-standing head coach in the league, and now looks like he will not be a head coach in the league this season, and that New Orleans wasn't necessarily a particularly attractive fit for him. It doesn't sound like they were overly enthusiastic about him, but it doesn't sound like he was overly enthusiastic about New Orleans either. And so the longer this has dragged on, and the longer that we try to sell ourselves and get excited and come up with the reasons for optimism for different guys, and then they have not enough interest in coming to New Orleans, including right now, Kellen Moore has been reported as sort of the leader in the clubhouse of the remaining candidates. But there's also questions of, does Kellen Moore actually want to leave his OC job in Philadelphia to be a head coach in New Orleans, when there will potentially be better opportunities for him in subsequent off seasons? That All of that is concerning about just where the franchise is, and the attractiveness or lack thereof of the opportunity for guys. And so we'll see. If they end up making an announcement in a week and a half or whatever it is, if Kellen Moore is the new head coach, then I think there's reasons to be optimistic about what he can bring to the offensive side of the ball in particular. And we'll see the growing pains of him as a head coach for the first time. But the process has been what has caught my attention more than anything, and it has not been great in that regard.
yeah, I think the only thing that you can say with this process and how long it's taken too, especially with the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl offensive coordinator that's going to be in town next week, is that they're not allowed to talk to him next week. But like we kind of talked about pre-show, it would be shocking to me if they didn't find out where Kellen Moore's hotel is, and maybe send him a nice floral arrangement, maybe a nice thing of beignets. Just oops, oh, I ran into you in the lobby. I could 1000% is see that happening next week.
The amount, whether it be NFL and coaching searches or whatever, or other leagues or college recruiting or any number of things, the amount of contact in some capacity that happens when you're not allowed to have actual contact is off the charts. The amount of things that are done before they're allowed to be done really is a very high number.
What do you think Pat Bev got from his Chinese team? Do you think he was given?
I hope nothing. Other than a flight to China, a one-way ticket to China, I hope that Pat Bev was given nothing.
Oh man, I'm just trying to bully you in a Jared's anger corner. That's really what I'm trying to do. So, I really, it's lackluster, is what I would say for this entire experience. It is a lackluster. If you're a Saints fan, just I think the
That's
entire
that's either
experience
that's
of
either
being
the
a Saints
perfect
fan,
word, or still too kind. It's
yeah.
it's it's definitely not underselling it.
Because to be honest, if I'm any of these coaches, I don't really want to go to the Saints. You got to work with Derek Carr throwing it away on fourth down, critical situation, or Chris Olave maybe dying from another concussion. Like, what is the state of the Saints? It's it's awful right now. So I feel like anyone coming into this might just be like a stopgap coach, and that's hard to ask anyone to do or to go into a new job. Think if you went into your job and they're like, "Hey, it's really not great right now, so we're just gonna really like kind of put all the hard stuff on you for a couple years until we really find the candidate that we want."
And that's kind of the fit where Mike McCarthy started to be more okay for me, is to
Yeah,
just
right?
kind of have some level of baseline there as some things got cleaned up. But it's been interesting hearing Mickey Loomis quoted talking about not trying to sell or pitch the Saints
God. I
situation
thought
to
you were gonna
candidates.
I thought you were gonna just say Mickey Loomis, not trying, and then just end the sentence.
Mickey Loomis has been quoted as saying they're not out there trying to pitch guys, sell guys on what the Saints opportunity is. And there's some sense to that of, you want someone that feels strongly and wants to come in and be passionate and doesn't need to be sold on the opportunity that is there to be one of the elite few NFL head coaches on planet Earth, and to do so in New Orleans. At the same time, it's a situation that right now clearly needs some level of selling. And I think back to the Sean Payton hire and him talking about coming into the city after and seeing kind of the state of it and some of the issues, and trying to build back after Katrina and all those things. And obviously it was something that he had to be passionate about, but it was also not a great situation that there needed to be, I want to say, some level of sales job on the Saints organization side, but it wasn't like he was coming into the most attractive
No.
situation at that point. And so if you need to sell the situation a little bit, I think there's something to be said for that. And also, I mean, trying to find the right person that is going to have some level of vision and some level of passion for taking a swing on a situation that isn't one of the most appealing jobs in the NFL right now.
I still wholeheartedly believe there needs to be a fire sale, and they just need to tank really, really poorly and then get the kid from Clemson next year. Because the quarterback situation is just I don't think Shador or Cam Ward or Jackson Dart, who's had a pretty good Senior Bowl leading up to this point. And apparently he's been at least turning some heads in the first 2 days via at least Todd McShay from his podcast he was talking about earlier, or at least the past 2 days. Um, you got to have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback right now, and I feel like that's the reason why Ben Johnson leaves that attractive OC position in Detroit, is because you go to Caleb Williams. You have this piece of amazing clay to mold to do with, and the Saints are kind of stuck right now, and that's I think the the rub of this whole situation is that the Saints, from a roster perspective, are kind of stuck in where they are for at least the next 1 or 2 years. What I would say, if we're going to sell the Saints job, the fan base and the atmosphere and the way that you are loved, if this team is producing, making the playoffs, a Super Bowl contender, um, I think that's the sell, is that New Orleans as a city will literally embrace you like you've never been embraced. And New Orleans as a city is one of the coolest places in America and one of the most unique places in America. And if you can win over the heart of the Nolans,
You had it right the first time. New Orleans.
uh, that is something I would put on with any other fan base in the country. And I think that's a selling point. And also, Alvin Kamara is a dog. So if especially we're talking Kellen Moore, we see what he did with Saquon. I can just imagine the way that Alvin Kamara would I mean, he's already the focal point of the offense, but explode, I think, even more. And the same thing with Taysom Hill, and same thing with Condre Miller, and also just I think the offense under Kellen Moore would at least show some life, but uh, it's a hard predicament. It's a weird place that we're in right now. So,
And I don't think the selling point that you just mentioned of the Saints, I don't think there should be any reason for Mickey Loomis or anyone else with the organization to shy away from that selling point to some of these coaches that they're bringing in. I almost did the
I
curse
heard
jar
it.
word
I
again.
heard it. I heard it.
But I'll correct myself again. Heck, if you're meeting with these guys for 8 and 9 hours, I think it's fine to maybe carve out 10 minutes in there for that or something along those lines. But you mentioned the Kamara piece for Kellen Moore too. And I, at this point, with where this process has gotten, I I do hope that we kind of find out, okay, Kellen Moore ended up being the guy at this point, but a move couldn't be made sooner because of the Super Bowl. And that's why, another week and a half drags out. And I think there's a lot of reason for optimism with him. And the Kamara piece is definitely one of the top bullet points that popped to mind. And you mentioned the dynamic with Saquon. All of Kellen Moore's offenses through the years, whether with the Cowboys, the Chargers, or now in Philadelphia, have been pretty respectable offenses, and particularly in the passing game, they've thrown the ball around a lot with a lot of efficiency. Running game has been more hit or miss, but you've seen him kind of adapt to now knowing what he has in Saquon Barkley and the ability to rely on him in the ground game, but also to get him involved in a variety of ways to throw him the ball out on some swings and do some different things with him. And I think that blueprint translates so beautifully to what could be with Alvin Kamara in New Orleans if Kellen Moore ends up being the guy.
We shall see. I actually the Eric Bieniemy thing. I wanted him to get a head coaching job for a very long time. I think he deserves it. I
Yeah.
would, it's weird because I'm like, but maybe just wait on the Saints. Like maybe just, I don't want anyone that I like to take this job. And to be honest, I have some just trepidation towards Kellen Moore. Yes, the offense have been good at the Chargers and at the Cowboys, but also there's been a lot of, and whether that is the head coaches and he doesn't have as much control, it's just play calling, whatever. There just been some lackluster or some things that I think have, been left to feel wanting within his stint as OCs across the league. This year, the Eagles are the most talented roster in the entire league. They're still going to lose to Patrick Mahomes, but they're the most talented roster in the league, just like last year. The most talented roster in the league still lost to Patrick Mahomes. It's just what the world that we live in now. We have to accept some hard truths. So, um, I don't, I don't expect this to go on much longer after the Super Bowl. If it does, then that's just a bunch more of red flags that are going to get raised. We'll see as it goes. I have not much else to say. There's not much else to say than that. So
No, I hope it works out, but it is not. They don't seem to be in a very good place right now in terms of.
what kind of takes do we have? We'll see how it goes. I hope it works out.
Yeah, look, I'm an optimistic guy and I like to be positive. It just feels like it is not a very good situation right now overall. And a lot can change quickly if you get the right guy. We just watched the Washington Commanders go from a 4-win team to the conference finals. And a lot of that is hitting on the right quarterback early in the first round. And I think Jaden Daniels is better than what we're going to see potentially come out of whether the Saints pick a young quarterback again there or not, what's available to them potentially at this point in this draft. But also a lot of credit needs to go to Dan Quinn and the leadership change there up in Washington and what that meant for that franchise to completely reset. I don't see that, regardless of who this hire is at this point in this process, that kind of a turnaround happening for the Saints. And so I'm trying to not be overly negative.
The only thing is also the NFC South is such a winnable conference.
Sure.
So to get to the playoffs, your road is so much easier than if you are in, the NFC East, the NFC North, the NFC West. As the rest of the NFC, I think, is so much better than what the NFC South is as a conference. And obviously, like Bryce Young had some jumps this year after, getting benched and coming back. And we'll see what Michael Penix does as well. And kind of, Baker and the Bucks are kind of established for I think what they are. The Saints, I mean, are kind of loosey goosey. And I think another thing you could say is how I know it was the first 2 weeks of the season, but there's something there if you can tap into it, you know?
The Saints ended up being so much worse this year to
Not
watch than what we expected
no, than
from them.
than you expected. Let's go back. Let's check the receipts. How pessimistic I was across the entire board.
But what I mean, we looked at them as being like a 7 to 9 win team, and I thought that was like on the
No.
optim.
I
Did you not?
I was on like the 4 to 5. I picked them to lose to Carolina the first week.
Okay, I thought you were at a 7 win. I was at a 9 win, something in that
It
type of ballpark.
might have been. I could just be lying. I could be flexing for the gram, but
And so even us going into this season feeling like they had issues, and in my case for sure, if not both cases, trying to stretch some optimism in some places, win here, win there. We're trying to kind of will them to a 500 point. And as bad as they were, they only ended up a few games shy of that because that division is what it is. And if they had been a 500 team, they're right there in the race for the division down the stretch, where Tampa wins the South at 10 wins, 10-7 Tampa compared to 14 win Philly, 15 win Detroit. And then, I mean, the West, obviously similar dynamic, 2 10-7 teams atop that division. I keep saying district because I'm used to covering high school.
it's called
But
parish. It's parish.
yeah, so I mean, you can win to parish if if you can get to 9 or 10 wins potentially, and in the South.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's the thing though. We're going to keep you updated. As soon as this news breaks, I'm sure we'll have an episode about it. And I'm sure we'll have thoughts, like we'll see what happens. That is all we got for you today. We just wanted to run through that real quick. It's a shorter PODna's episode, but I think still packed full of nonsense, which is all I'm trying to do on this show. So I'm here to bring the sense and in the non fashion. So
yeah, we got onto some nice tangents about the music as well as to the end of just
oh yeah.
debating how many wins you projected them having. We went off.
Yeah, don't please no one receipt me on the internet. Don't take the time to sleuth to do that. It's not worth it. I was probably wrong. Here's the thing. All right, we did it. And if you want to listen to my music, just search Handsome Ass Dan. You'll be able to find it. So it's not a curse jar. It's a part of a proper name.
And I don't really fully know, but Brad Kemp does something called Handsome Naked. So
he does. And he also produces his own stuff. You can check Brad out on anywhere that you get your music. Just search Brad Kemp. He works with a bunch of different artists. He's worked with a couple of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race. He's been on NBC Bring the Funny. We brought some heat for this theme song. So I think it's pretty good.
Just to try and fit in, I'll be launching more of my music career and also be trying to come up with a use of the word handsome in the title somewhere. So
you have to. I mean,
we'll
at this
figure
point,
that out.
At this point, you kind of have to. That's all we got for you today, though. Thank you, Brad Kemp. PODna.